Hey guys, what's up? It's Tinlun again, back with another video. This time we're doing a deep dive into how I make my custom homemade cola pens. So here we have a look at a couple of my cola pens that I've been using over the years. They're well used, they're well worn, there's a lot of ink dried in them. And I'm also going to show you a couple of pens here that I've made that have not turned out well, and I'm going to describe why those didn't turn out as good as the first two that I showed you. And to start off, cola pens are loosely based on what's called a folded pen. This is a folded pen, it's made of brass. The tip is made of brass. It's literally a folded sheet of brass that's cut into kind of like a blade shape. And so here we have a look at a folded pen as compared to one of my homemade cola pens. The main difference, as you'll see a little bit closer later on, folded pen only has one fold. So there's like a single reservoir, if you will, to hold ink. My cola pens, as they're constructed, have 3 reservoirs to hold ink. And that's a lot more ink than usual, which is why you get such a crazy splattering when you write with this thing. Alright, now let's get started here. First, we'll take a look at the supplies that you'll need for this project. First, you're going to need a utility knife, which is sort of optional, but what you're really going to need is a good pair of sturdy, high-quality utility scissors. The scissors are really what's going to get you through this project. The knife will help with some of it, but it's really not as necessary as the scissors. Secondly, you'll also need some sort of stick, like some sort of handle that you're going to wrap this blade around. And so I've been using some really cheesy pencils, some of those free pencils that you get when you go to, I don't know, like your kids' open house or something, or sometimes on Halloween, some of the parents hand out pencils, or even if you go to get some Chinese takeout and they give you some chopsticks, those will work as well. You're also going to need some masking tape, and of course you will need aluminum cans. It can be any sort of aluminum can, beer can, soda can, but as long as it's a normal kind of aluminum can that you can easily cut through, that's going to work. Aluminum foil is a completely different thing. It's not rigid enough. Don't even try it with aluminum foil. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the utility knife, and you can also do this with the scissors if you don't have a utility knife, but I'm going to take my utility knife and cut into the can. And I'm going to spare you the audio from this part of the video, but seriously, when you make these cuts, it produces quite the terrible sound. It's comparable to nails on a chalkboard, so be prepared to have some metal on metal screeching sounds, and it's just very not pleasant at all. So really what we're trying to get from this can is the flat part of the aluminum. So basically we want to cut the ends off and then save that middle part that will end up being a long rectangular sheet when you're done cutting it. Once you have the center of the can cut out, that sheet is big enough to make 2 cola pens. So you can actually cut that sheet in half. Now the original designs for a cola pen called for cutting an aluminum sheet like this, folding it once, and then making your blade shape literally mimicking the brass folded pen that I showed you earlier. The problem with that I found was that the aluminum was way too flimsy with just one fold. So I'm going to show you the modification that I made to create a more durable pen and a more splattery pen. And so you're going to take your half sheet of aluminum there, and you're going to fold it in half again, and you want to square off all the edges, so you can go ahead and trim off the kind of the rough edges around all sides. Once you're done doing that, what you're basically going to do is with each half of this sheet that you have that's folded, each side is going to have its own W fold. So basically what you want to do is fold down about 2/3 of the way down, make a fold there, and you can do the same on the other side that's mirrored, and you're going to fold back up another 1/3 so that you have this multi-level accordion fold going on. So I'm pulling this apart now to show you kind of what it looks like with the whole thing folded. When you open it up, you're going to take your pencil and you're going to put it about an inch into this fold. You want to make sure that's kind of nice and tight in there. And here's a comparison with an already made pen, what it looks like. So you're basically going to wrap this folded aluminum around the end of the pencil. And so you're going to take some of your masking tape here and you're just simply going to tape it down tightly. So you want to take your masking tape and you want to tape around the part of the aluminum that's wrapped around the pencil. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then you're going to take more tape and tape partially around the aluminum and then partially around the pencil. That way you're actually securing the aluminum to the pencil. So you can take a few extra strips of tape here and kind of reinforce, make sure that's really on there, make sure it's nice and tight. But what's important is to not tape around that open part, the part that's contacting the paper. You don't want tape. And I'm showing you a comparison of how not to do it. This pen, I taped too much around the edge that's facing the paper, and it completely sealed up the aluminum and it didn't pick up much ink and it just was not very good to write with. I did this a little bit in a backwards order here. I went ahead and made my blade cut first before I taped the top edge. You can tape it first or you can cut first. It doesn't really matter. But basically the cut that you want to make is an elongated curve. It's almost like a chef's knife blade. So then you can take your utility scissors and cut through that. And it's going to take a little bit of force to cut through that because you're cutting through several layers there. You can see as many layers as that's folded there. That's really, really sturdy. You can do this step before you cut or after you cut, it doesn't matter. But as long as you tape that top edge shut, then you're good. So there you have it. That's pretty much a finished pen. Now all that's left to do is to kind of test it out and kind of see how it behaves. So each Cola pen is going to behave slightly differently. I mean, if you generally make them all the same way, they're going to basically be the same, but each one has its own little nuance of how it's going to behave. And it's basically going to be up to you to understand what those nuances are, and that's going to come from just practice. Just keep writing with the pen and see how it behaves and understand what it does when you write at certain angles or make certain strokes. Alright, so let's do a little test here. I'm going to show you what the folded pen looks like, the brass folded pen. Again, this is a very rigid edge with only one ink reservoir, so it doesn't hold a lot of ink and there isn't a whole lot of splatter or texture to it unless you write very fast or very hard, or you're writing on maybe a specific kind of surface that has a lot of texture to it already. But for the most part, it's going to write pretty smoothly. So now moving on to one of my Cola pens. This is one of my used Cola pens, and you can see that it does have a little bit of a learning curve. You will have to go over some of the strokes just to maybe get some more ink to come out or to drag some of the ink around. But you can see the different kind of textures that come out when you drag that blade across the paper at the correct angle. And you can see how much splatter it generates just when you dip the pen. It just picks up so much ink and you can just splatter it everywhere. And see, these are the kind of lines that you can generate. Look at that texture. That texture is very random, but you're controlling all of it at the same time. So the way I'm doing that is I'm basically holding my pen, the blade is about a 45-degree angle to the paper, and I'm dragging the open blade part into the stroke side. So the open part is going to generate all that splatter going towards the stroke. And so now let's see what the pen that we just made looks like, what it's going to generate. And so you can see it's generating very similar results to my used pen. There's some pretty good splatter going on, some really good texture. When you're done using the pen, you don't have to clean it. I've never cleaned it and it still generates the same results. The ink dries up in there, and I think that actually does reinforce the blade tip a little bit. And so here's what the one that we just made looks like in practice with writing. Some really lovely texture coming out with the bottom of the L, the V, that E. It's just insane textures coming from this pen that we just made from literally a soda can. And these are textures that you can't generate in Procreate. These are textures that you can't buy in a Photoshop brush, at least not to my knowledge. every stroke is different and random and unique. And so this is why I love the Cola pen, because you know it's just such a different kind of tool and so satisfying to use. And so now we can take a look at a couple of the pens that I've made in the past, the ones that I closed up a little bit too much that I talked about earlier. If we dip those in ink, they don't really write very much at all. The stroke is pretty weak, pretty small, and I think the key problem is how closed I made that bottom part of the blade. And so I think if you're going to use chopsticks, a good way to go is to tape two chopsticks together. With a single chopstick, you can close up that blade completely by accident and it won't perform well. But if you tape two chopsticks together and then you wrap the aluminum blade around it, it will stay open on the bottom and it will perform just like the others will. So guys, that was a look at how I make my Tenlun style Cola pens, homemade with a Coke can. Feel free to go out and try it on your own. Let me know if you have any questions or run into any issues. Leave a comment in the description. If you run into any issues or any problems, leave a comment below. I will try to address all the questions. Please feel free to like and share. And please consider subscribing, because that really helps my channel out. If you subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you know when I put out a new video. I'm here to share everything that I've learned and hopefully help you guys out with some of the little tidbits of knowledge that I've gathered through the years. So thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.